Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for north central Minnesota. Closed captioning is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Ray Gildow, and welcome to Lakeland Currents. When I was 14, 15, 16, 17, I worked on a farm on my aunt and uncle's dairy farm in Pine River, Minnesota. And I thought, boy, this is a life I really love. Although, being that I'm a little older than my guests are today, we had loose hay. We didn't have hay bales. We had loose hay. We put them up up in the barn with a sling, and those days are gone. But I still thought, oh, this is a great life. I really like to do this. So when I got to be about 17 or 18 years old, and I realized I didn't hardly have enough money to buy a used car, there's probably no way in the world that I'm going to be able to buy land and get into farming. So I changed my direction and I didn't do that. But the thing we're talking about today is family farming. And family farming is changing so drastically in this country. I'm not talking about just Minnesota, but I'm talking about the agricultural business from the East Coast to the West Coast. And the thing that we're finding is that there are very, very few young people getting into farming. If they don't have a family connection to the land and to the property, to the machinery, it's really tough for people to get into that business. But the people I have here today have done that transition from one generation to the other, and they've done it very well. I'm not saying they haven't done it without stress, but they've done it very well. And full disclosure, these guys are both friends of mine. We've known each other for a long time. So I'm introducing tonight Norm Krause, who is the father. You can tell he's got the white hair. And his son, John. And John's, you said it's been 12 years now since you've taken over the farm.
Yes.
And you're not dairy farmers, obviously, but Norm, you used to be a dairy farmer. Why don't you share a little bit about your background before we get into what you guys do?
Okay. Well, thanks, Ray. I grew up on a small dairy farm by the little town of Eagle Bend. And I remember my dad had, like, most dairy farms at the time, 30, 40 cows, 50 cows. And, plus he raised all the livestock. Well, then I went to college and had an opportunity after college to come back to the farm. And I joined in a partnership with my dad and my brother for 8 years. And at that time, I thought maybe that was something that I wanted to do. I found out that milking cows was not my thing, even though, I enjoy raising crops and all the other aspects of farming, but that was not my thing. So then I went to work for the college for 22 years. But at the same time, I always had
Central Lakes College.
Central Lakes College,
Yep.
And always had the desire to farm, but just not raising livestock. And so nights, weekends, and holidays, I maintained a small farm, and we gradually grew it. And we grew it south of Staples, where I worked at the college at Staples.
And John, you didn't grow up probably expecting to be in farming. You all actually took a different trail and went into lineman school at Wadena, at the technical college. Mm-hmm. And you did that for a while, didn't you?
I did that for one summer, and then I did not get hired as a lineman, as a full-time lineman. So then I had the opportunity to come back to the farm and work for Norm. And then Norm said that he was looking to transition out of it. So then we moved forward with that process and trying to getting everything lined up for for the transition. And it took 5 years. So Norm, we started with that, and we went 20% every year, and then Norm gradually just kept getting less and less, and everything worked out great.
Was that a hard transition for you?
No, it wasn't as hard as what I thought. I mean, it involved a lot of people to make that transition. It involved our accountant, it involved our ag lender, it involved the insurance person, and it involved a person that specializes in farms transitions. So it wasn't as hard
Where did that person come from?
It came from the ag credit system from up by Fargo.
Okay.
So, and also involved, a legal attorney that you have to, when you make transitions, with equipment and land and that type of thing.
So when you got into this business, John, were you ever thinking about livestock of any kind?
I have not thought about livestock. We've talked about turkeys, raising turkeys, but it would not seem feasible for what we're trying to do.
Because you didn't have the buildings for it, right?
We did not have the buildings, so then we would have to have a contract with, say, Genio or any other turkey growing operation, and they wanted too much of a long-term contract for what we were after.
Could you see yourself getting into what you're doing now without your dad?
No, it is impossible to get into the farming industry nowadays unless you have somebody that has a financial background to support you.
And before we get into what you guys do, I know both of you spend time with organizations. I know, Norm, you've been overseas. I think you've been to Russia, looking at how different farm operations in the world operate. I would guess they're dealing with the same kind of issues with families that we are in this country, aren't they?
Almost every place we go. I mean, just last summer we were in Argentina, and we're on a number of different farms. And it's amazing, the process is very similar. I mean, and these were large farms that we were on. Sometimes some of them were over 100,000 acres.
Wow.
But they have it much more difficult than what we do because there's just not the infrastructure there, like tar roads, like internet, cell phone service, all that. I mean, once you get off the main road in Argentina, there's just not that infrastructure that we're used to and that we have the luxury of having here in this country.
So how did you decide that first couple years, who makes the decision? If it's going to be equipment repairs or whatever, how did you come up with that plan?
Once John started taking over the farm, I took a back seat to the decision making. I always say if I don't sign the checks, the person that signs the checks is the one that's in control.
But that was a huge move for you, wasn't it? I mean, I'm sure
it is. It's a conscientious move, and you have to be willing to let go. As the senior partner or the senior farmer, you have to be willing to let go and let the junior partner make decisions. Let them make some mistakes,
sure,
and then from those mistakes, learn a lot.
Yeah. So roughly how many acres do you farm?
It depends on.
I know you rent property too, but in general, I mean, 2,000 to 3,000. Okay, and that's a pretty big farm for the Staples area, I would say, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for a family farm, it is.
Yeah, and what crops are you specializing in?
Well,
dry beans.
We're specializing in primarily kidney beans. But dry beans of all kinds. I mean, we've grown 3 different kinds of kidney beans: white kidneys, dark red kidneys, light red kidneys, black beans, pink beans,
navy beans,
small red beans. Even this year we grew some black-eyed peas.
Wow. And it was an odd year, wasn't it, with all the rain we had this summer? I mean, it was a very challenging, I would guess. It's kind of interesting. I know you guys don't raise sweet corn, but our sweet corn crop at home was terrible. And I was up at Pequot this summer talking to guys late in the fall, and they said there was just widespread terrible sweet corn. I don't know why, it was too much rain or what. I know we had a lot of cool nights this year. And agriculture, as you guys can attest to, is a challenging business because you have no guarantees of what you're getting for price.
No.
Most of the time, as John says, you buy at retail and sell at wholesale.
That's what farming is.
And you guys are, John, I would say you're a cutting edge farmer because you really do believe in technology.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done on your farm in technology?
So some of the things that we've done with technology is incorporated like auto steer, so that way the operators don't have to steer the machinery going up and down the field. And then we've also gotten into where a lot of like technology on the irrigation, so we can control everything through the phone and watch things through the phone and then see if they're actually working or not, and then we can go out there and check on things. Where versus back when I first started with Norm, we actually had to physically go out twice a day, check the irrigation.
I remember that, yeah.
And nowadays, we can actually see when the exact time is that the pivot will break down, or if it's moving, or if it's not working, and then we can go troubleshoot it from that point.
And you did a little work with drones this summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
So what we did is, instead of using like an airplane, we've actually gone to using drones because they're much more accurate, they're closer, they're quieter, and so then, and it's in all reality, what they can do is it's less fatigue on the operators because it's two guys, but yet they can come directly out to the field.
So 2 guys operate the system.
2 guys operate the system, and so then they can come directly out to the field, and then they can go and spray, smaller fields, so that way they're not dealing with all like the trees and power lines and everything else.
And have you gotten into the technology where you sort of spray just certain parts of a field that needs it? Or
we have not gotten into that technology, but that technology is available. They have what they call a see and spray, and so it'll see the weed and it'll spray directly right onto that plant.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were starting out today, the biggest challenge would be land. What are land values worth around our area, central Minnesota now, roughly?
Well, it's changing constantly, and there hasn't been that much land that is sold, but it's a lot of it can be anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000-6,000 an acre. Again, depending on if it has irrigation, if it has tile, what the size of the fields are. The larger the fields, the better it is, especially if they're square. Depending on if you have wetlands in the fields or around the edges of the fields, that type of thing. So, the land now it's gone up quite a bit in the last probably 4 or 5 years. And so I would say a lot of land now is in that 3,000 to 5,000 an acre.
Wow. Mm-hmm. When you started, Norm, what was a good yield for corn, a bushel?
Well, I was amazed when we could get 150 bushel.
And now what is a real good year producing?
Well, John,
270 to 300 bushel.
300 bushel. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Just in certain parts of the field.
Yeah.
It's not across the whole field.
But I mean, the average is, we're this last year 40 bushel above the national average.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And John has been the one that has done that.
What do you attribute that to?
It attributes to variable rate technology. So, we variable rate the population on the
what do you mean variable rate?
So in the field, we'll go anywhere from, say, like 34,000 up to 36,000, depending on the soil types and how it lays out in the field.
That's the population of the corn.
Yep.
What it does is it takes into account your soil test and your soil maps of that you have of each field, and then where the soil has the ability to produce more,
we put more product.
You put on, probably you have a higher rate of population, you put on more fertilizer, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we're doing as we share this tonight is we have some video of your farm and some of the storage facilities. I remember, Norm, when you started, I think you had maybe 2 bins.
Yeah.
And how many bins do you have now?
We are up to 7 there.
7.
Plus you have some cone bottom bins for
bins.
temporary storage or for seed storage.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So you don't haul your grain into a feed store. You haul your grain into your own property.
Yes.
And then you hold it until you think the prices are right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep. And then we have the ability to get our crop in a timely manner. That's the main reason why we built all the infrastructure, and then we can go from there during the wintertime and deliver grain all winter long.
Wow. So you have semis?
Yes.
You have tractors?
Yep.
What else you have for equipment?
Irrigation.
Irrigation equipment?
Yep. And then we do have some tile that's in the ground, but that's not equipment. But, tile helps us out immensely. And everybody thinks that tile is like a storm sewer, and it is not.
Storm drain.
Yep.
Oh.
And it is not. What it does is it just takes the excess water. So what I always explain to everybody is the ground is like a sponge. And so if you put a sponge in water and pull it out, you see the droplets that come off the sponge. That's all that we're capturing for when we do tile. Okay, But tile is a great asset for us.
So in order to get those kind of yields, you got to have tile. And because our ground does not have the ability to hold water, like say in southern Minnesota or western Minnesota, which is native prairie ground, we have to supplement it with irrigation. So some of the ground has irrigation, some of the ground has tile, some has both, in order to continuously the entire field to get good yields.
Yeah. So and you've had young men working for you, young guys. I'm not going to name names, but I know one of them is into the dairy business now, and that was his dad's in dairy too. But I know he spent some time in your business, and it's good to see a person young. I don't know how old he is, in his late 20s, early 30s, doing well. If someone came to you and they're dynamic and energetic and they want to learn about farming, are you open to working with like an internship?
Yes, I would be more than happy to work with somebody like that.
Are there any internships from any of the colleges that are doing anything with young people?
I think Central Lakes College is doing some internships, to help out with some of that. But
we haven't tied into that yet.
We have not tied in.
You haven't had the need to, I suppose, yet for help, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, it would be nice. And I think the right person come along, I know John would be very open to help
with that person.
And to training that person. I mean, it takes a while to learn what you're doing.
I don't think people probably understand the stress that you're under during harvest or production time. It's a very stressful life. You've got to have good weather. You can't have storms, and you can't have big equipment breakdowns. It's a really challenging job, isn't it? I'm not suggesting people shouldn't do it, but it's not something that just anybody can do. They have to have a set of skills to be able to cope with that. What's your coping background? Do you have a strong wife that helps in the business?
I do have a strong wife that's very helpful in the business, and she does all of the book work, and she helps out with the daily
and your
tasks.
mom and dad
and my parents. Yes, they help out as well. So, and some of the most difficult thing in agriculture nowadays is managing people.
In what way? What do you mean?
We don't have the training to manage people. And so understanding how to work with people and their attitudes. And
so you're talking about yourself as a manager.
Yes.
Of having the skills to work with challenging people sometimes.
That is the most challenging nowadays. Transition, there's a lot of people to help you with transitioning, but as far as the management aspect, everybody has trouble managing their operations. So it's interesting that, it used to be that you could, just one family was all that was employed on a farm. Father, maybe a son, a couple daughters or whatever, and the wife. Now, in order to have a economically viable farm, you have to have enough acres, which then requires people. And so, that's what I've told some of the, CHS and some of these that invest in transition planning. I said, not only do you need transition planning, but you need employment, how to deal with employees and how to treat employees and how to get the most that you can out of them to, for efficiencies and that type of thing. And there is very little of that training out there. And I'm hoping eventually that the colleges and some of the organizations that offer that type of classes or training would look at that in greater detail.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I'm sure a lot of the farms around central Minnesota are just little family farm operations, and they don't have the demand for extra labor, for example, so they just do their own business. But as an organization grows, they can make or break you, can't they? If you get the wrong.
For instance, you had 7 or 8 people working at harvest.
Wow!
Because you have 2 or 3 truck drivers, you have a grain cart operator,
combine operator, and
and
then you have somebody doing tillage. And then somebody has to keep all of that going.
And what do you do in the off season? Do you do a lot of equipment repairs?
We do equipment repairs. Do you
have mechanics that help, or how do you do that, John?
So I have a couple employees that come and help me, like for instance in the shop, and then in the wintertime we do a lot of paperwork because we have to work with 17 different state and federal agencies.
17?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And so they're all getting paid to do the paperwork, and we are not.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, my wife and I, we sat down and counted up the agencies that we work with. For instance, DNR, MPCA,
EPA.
EPA, all the different, soil and water,
Farm Service Agency,
Farm Service Agency,
NRCS.
Wow.
So, it's a lot of different state and federal agencies that you do paperwork for your business.
Yeah. Wow. So when you look at the younger people that do come and work, I'm sure it gets discouraging for them if they want to get into farming, but they don't have the money.
Correct.
What are some options? You know any options? I know that's not what you guys do, but are there options for these younger people to try to get into something?
There is options for these younger people, but they have to go find somebody that's already in the industry and then see if they can get involved with the operation. So becoming an employee is a good way to start with that, and then going there from that point on, being progressive and trying to learn the operation and how to do that.
And maybe get in a partnership or just very similar from a father-son, it would be, somebody outside the organization would slowly work their way in, if that's what they desire.
Sure. Wow. So I know you've raised other crops like barley. Do you do that anymore? Do you raise barley anymore?
We raise barley. We used to raise malting barley for Anheuser-Busch, but we've gotten away from that, and now we've raised it for more pet food.
Really?
So, yep.
And then how about straw? Do you still have a good outlet for straw?
Yes, straw is very easy to get rid of because it's a product that can be used for bedding, it can be used for landscaping, anything as far as that goes.
And there's not that many people that raise small grain in the area. We do it for rotation, so you raise both barley and...
I've raised some oats, and then we've also raised rye as well.
And some spring wheat once or twice.
Okay. Wow.
And then John is doing some small grain for seed production.
So when you're looking at some of the crops, John, and you're trying to get the yields up, what are the beans that you're finding that are the most profitable for you guys right now? What kind of beans?
The kidney beans is the most profitable. A lot of times what we say is it's a third of our acres and it's 2/3 of our income. So that's what's helped us along with all that.
And have they been pretty disease resistant for the most part?
They are not. There's a lot of old technology in the seed compared to what corn and soybeans is, because we're a small part of the world, as far as raising a crop goes.
Sure. So do you still go out and look for buyers for your products, or are you pretty well locked into a group?
We're always continuously looking for new buyers because then it presents new opportunities.
Now you have a daughter, and she's how old now?
She is 10 months old.
10 months old, so she's not ready to help out yet, is she?
No, not even close.
But do you see your daughter getting involved in agriculture at some point?
I hope that she wants to get involved.
You could have 4 boys. Who knows?
Yep.
You're still a young man.
And actually, sometimes women are better managers than men are.
Really?
Yes, because they know how to manage people a little bit better than what, say, men will, because we're more blunt and they're more willing to listen to some of the problems and then try to work with that.
Well, and again, I think in the summertime during your growing period, that's when you're really dealing with so much stress, and it's some of those days I'm sure it feels pretty short.
Yeah, in our operation, we always joke, we say that we plant for 6 weeks and we harvest for 6 months, because we get done planting in the first part of June, and then we start with our first cutting hay right after that. Yeah. So then we start harvest right away.
Wow. So, are you seeing any other new farms in the area?
Not really. Most of it is an expansion of existing farms.
And we don't have as many beef operations in your area, like Eagle Bend, Staples, as there are north of here.
Right.
There's a lot of beef operations in the north, and that's beef and hogs are up and down too, aren't they? I mean, it's very challenging. What's this year looking like for harvest, for production and for price?
Production is going to be down just a little bit because we've had a lot of rain, but then overall production in the United States is up, so then the price is going to continuously go down. And then the challenge is the government with the trade and everything.
And they haven't got the farm bill done yet.
I know, it's been a year and it hasn't done anything.
Yeah, and so I mean, that becomes more important, is to get that done so the farmers have some certainty in looking forward. I mean, right now for most of the commodity crops, corn, soybeans primarily, there's red ink. It's not profitable unless it's different circumstances like exceptional yield, or you're able to get inputs for less than what the average person is. But both corn and soybeans are not profitable at the present day prices.
Wow, isn't that something? And in your free time, you burn wood.
Yes.
And you burn wood for your machine shop.
Yes.
That is heated with wood. And you heat your home with wood. But it's not chunks of wood that I use. It's a pretty good size operation, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
And that's a lot of work too, though, isn't it?
It is a lot of work.
Do you do that cutting mostly in the fall and the wintertime?
We do a lot of cutting during the summertime, and then during
do?
the fall, some as well. But what we do is that we're always improving fields.
Okay.
And so we're always
that's
cutting
part
up
of your
around
cutting.
the edges of the fields to try to help with production.
Norm and Jon, you're a successful team, and I'm very proud of you. Congratulations. You've been watching Lakeland Currents. I'm Ray Gildow. So long until next time.